Hi, everybody. This is Brandon Dawson, and welcome to the Be Dawson podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about family businesses. Family businesses. You know, I've managed hundreds of family businesses. I've had the privilege of working with fathers and sons, husbands and wives, fathers and daughters, mothers, daughters, fathers, sons, brothers and sisters, cousins, you name it, I've worked with it. And I started when I was a young man at 8 years old working in a family business, and I worked in a family business until I was 25. So I have the benefit of my own personal experience working in a family business. A family that works together and plays together stays together. That's for sure. And if you keep that attitude and you keep that mindset and you go into it intentionally making sure that that is the focus, it can be unbelievably rewarding. But what happens when you have turmoil in a family business? And what are the things that can cause turmoil? And then what do you do about having that turmoil? And I think this is an area I've spent a lot of time because I have a leadership boot camp that hundreds and hundreds of people have run through, and many occasions the whole development process was for people to learn how to work together more effectively, how to respect each other more remarkably, and how to, in some cases, keep the family together because of the stress and dynamics of the business. And so I do a lot of role playing in the boot camps, and so I get to see firsthand how people are responding, reacting, or engaging in family business. So this theme today is going to be talking about setting proper expectations in the family business. When family members are arguing, debating, or carrying their pressure and stress into the organization, into the culture, into the business, it creates an uncomfortable situation for everyone around there. So the first and foremost is having some rules about when we walk through that front door and we're in game time, we are all in the game, and it's all about the game. We don't carry our personal stuff. And this is true, like when we coach employees that are struggling working in a business and they're bringing their personal baggage into the business, we coach the employees on how not to do that as well, because you got to think of the business as the game. You're in the game. And the moment you go through that door, or the moment you're engaged with something relative to supporting the mission, which is the business, you got to be in mission mode. Think of astronauts. They can have a lot of stuff going through their head. Think of the support mechanism at NASA, supporting the astronauts. Each one of those people could have a lot of things going on in their head about personal stuff or relationships. But when somebody's so interdependent on what you're talking about and what you're thinking about and what you're doing, that it could make or create the difference of devastation or success. The question to ask yourself is, how in the game do you need to be at that moment? I mean, come on. How many of you would love if all the aircraft controller organizations were controlled by family businesses that were spending all their energy while they're watching the blips on the radar, arguing and debating about things that are happening outside of that moment and that objective? How secure would you feel? You wouldn't feel secure at all. So if you think of your job, your responsibility, your commitment to the mission, greater and above all else, when you come in that door or when you're involved in the business, you have to understand it's about the mission. If you can get everyone focused on the mission and the objective of the mission and how they fit into that, and when you're in the game or when you're in motion and you're engaged in the mission, staying focused and keeping it relative to the mission. Now, some would say, that sounds easy, but if you're already teed off or upset or pissed off at your spouse or your kid, and now you're going into the office and you're working side by side, that's not easily done. And what I would say to you is, you're right. I fully get it. I see it. But everything's energy. And if you're irritated with each other, and if you're short with each other, and your business is reliant on other people helping you and working with you, or customers coming into that environment, and people feel that, it's actually pushing people away from you. So much in business is energy. And if the vibe isn't enthusiastic, excited, compelled, committed, aligned, and the vibe is something other than that, your customers feel it. If your employees feel it, they'll reverberate it to your customers. If your customers feel it directly, they'll amplify it to themselves and the community around you. So I think really understanding that when you're in business, having a much higher purpose for the business outside of the contributors in the business, all contributors, family members, employees, everyone, understanding that when you're in the game and you're doing what you need to be doing at the highest impact possible, personal stuff needs to be set aside. Now, there'll be growth in that. You will have to learn to navigate that. You'll have to learn to do that. But think about everything you do as energy, and just ask yourself a simple question. In anyone that encounters us, in our mission to be the best at what we do, how do we want them to feel about us in the process of doing it? This is a core question. If you're challenged in a family business today and you're trying to figure out how to navigate getting everyone in the family to get along, to go along, to drive the business to the mission, do this one exercise. Bring whoever you're working with into the room and say, the mission of this business, the purpose is this. Identify what that is, crystal clear. And then say, each of us have a purpose and our own mission in fulfilling that commitment if we're really serious about it. And we all are obligated to support and contribute to the mission in our own individual and unique ways. And then each person write down, when somebody encounters any of you while you're performing your duties and responsibilities and contributing to the environment and contributing to the mission, when people encounter you, your own employees, external customers, vendors, anyone, when they encounter you, what is the vibrational energy? If you could transfer that into words, 3 to 5 words, how do you want people to feel and engage you if you could define it with 5 words? And then ask if those 5 words are exemplifying what you are or are not doing. And I'll give you some examples. If I want people to feel secure, I want them to feel confident, I want them to feel alive, I want them to feel valued, then they need to see that and feel it in the environment and the culture. So if I say I want people to feel valued, I want them to feel confident, I want them to feel excited to work with us, I want them to feel empowered to be able to do whatever we're doing with them, then ask yourself, are the things we're doing in that culture and in that environment exemplifying that or undermining it? And do it as a family objective. Have each person in the family write down, this is very simple, have them write down when people encounter us, what is the energy and what is the things we want them to see that reflect on us as a business who's serious about our commitment to whatever it is we're doing. How would I describe how I want them to feel and see us in that situation? And have each family member write down 3 to 5 words. And then take a big board out and put all those words on the board. And then ask the question, Are we every day in everything we're doing, in every way we do it, around everyone who encounters it? Are we intentionally creating that message through all we do every time we do it and with each other? Because as leaders in the organization, the one thing about a family business is people view the owner as the owner, but they view the family members as important factors in the leadership and sincerity of the owner of that business. So if their own family's not serious about it, or they're not committed, or they're bickering, or they're not aligned, or they're not showing up on time, or they're not contributing at the highest level of impact possible, or if they misunderstand or don't understand the mission of the organization and they don't support it, then that establishes a culture for everyone else in the business to behave and engage that culture the same way. I've coached so many business owners that are upset or angry that their team members act a certain way while showing up or being at work. And the first thing you have to do is go and look at the engagement of the family members in that same business, because they set a precedent. And if you're an owner and you're treating your family member like they're not an owner or they're not that big of a contributor, but yet you're not treating them with the understanding that other people view them as a family member, and they don't have that obligation to behave at their highest level of impact, and you don't have the obligation of treating them with that respect. Because, being someone who's worked in a family business, there is a huge expectation of external people and of the business you're working in, where sometimes you don't feel as valued as other people, but you feel like you're expected to do more, and that's not acknowledged. So I think one of the things I want to make sure that you understand is when you take that document out, you take that board out, and you write down those words that amplify and exemplify your message, your purpose, your intentionality in the business. Ask yourself if you as a collective group are consistent with sending those messages, or are you doing things to detract from those key words? And this is a great exercise, because once you do it as a family, you then need to do it as an organization. So you need to rechannel other people's perspective and their perception of what's actually happening in that environment, because if it's out of control, if it's not in alignment, if it's not intentional and purposeful, if everyone isn't engaging at the highest level of professionalism in that particular situation, then you certainly can't expect anybody on your team to engage at the highest level of contribution with the highest level of respect. Because the owner of the business has already said, or owners, that those elements in the business aren't important. Family businesses that excel and that succeed and have the highest impact treat all family members and all employees with the same amount of respect and structure. Just because you work in a business with a family member doesn't entitle you to anything different than any other contributor. But if you own the business and you're making future promises to your family, telling them, well, one day you're going to own the business, you got to work twice as hard, you got to put in more effort, you got to put in more energy, and you don't reward people for that behavior, then they'll lose confidence, they'll lose faith, they'll lose trust, and then you have friction, resistance, anxiety, stress, and constraint. So what you have to do in business, in general, with everyone that works for the intentionality and the purpose of the mission, is to make sure everyone is aligned with their duties, responsibilities, and expectations so they can fulfill that mission and be rewarded and recognized for doing it as such. Don't make false promises. Don't make future promises. Don't treat people differently because they're a family member. Treat everybody the same. And this sometimes takes strong leadership. But if you sit down and you say with every person that works in the organization, here's your role, here's your function, here's your expected contribution, and if you do these things, here's what you get paid. If you go over and above those things, here's what you get rewarded. And if you want to do things bigger, better, and more substantively than what you're doing, here's your development plan. And those that succeed with competency, those that succeed with intentionality, and those that grow will have the future opportunities. And create a culture where people can succeed in your environment, or they get weeded out if they don't, and treat everyone exactly the same. And if you do that, then family members working with you won't have false expectations because sometimes they're getting false promises. Family members working together won't have false expectations because there's no transparency and communication, and so they might assume certain things that aren't going to be true, which create future huge problems. So what I would say to you is identifying what environment you want to have, what culture you want to have, and how you want people to perceive your ability to run and lead an organization with or without family, and for the people that work in your organization to give you the highest contribution with the highest intentionality, that are developing their competency and growing personally and professionally. Those people should be rewarded. So if somebody is working harder and more substantively and creating more impact than a family member, they're not listening to you promise a future position to a family member, thus running them off to someone who works in the family who maybe isn't as good a contributor. Conversely, if you tell family members this is the way you ascend through the organization, and if you do these things, maybe one day you can own a piece of the organization, but only after I see you do these things, then you'll eliminate confusion while you have family working together. So doing the things you can to eliminate confusion, clarify intentionality, and be purposeful and intentful about where you're going, what you expect from everyone's contribution to get there, how you're going to support that through development, and how people have to earn the positions that they get. They have to earn the compensation they get, and everyone's on an equal playing field. That will eliminate a majority of the things that happen in family businesses from the beginning. And I'll get into a whole bunch of examples and scenarios in different and future podcasts. But one thing I want to tell you is this. If you have a family business and things are working and things are going great, still apply this rule. Grow your family together, create a higher level of consciousness and awareness on how the family can cohesively work together, how they can synergize the value that they bring, and how they can complement the magnitude of mission as a team. Empower them with clarity and understanding of where the organization needs to go and how they need to contribute to that. If you're currently in a family business that's got stress, friction, anxiety, you have fear, or you have anger going on, you need to just separate yourself out of that for a moment and ask, is this working for me personally? Is it working for me professionally? And is it working for me financially? Because what I find in those businesses is they have three levers working against you in the business. You have the professional lever that's hurting everyone. You have the personal lever that's hurting you, and you have the financial lever that's hurting the business, thus everyone. And then it ultimately hurts the customer. So if you're operating your business today with negative energy because you have the dynamics of negative things going on in the family business, stay tuned to this podcast. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. Feel free to direct message me, ask questions, email me if you're struggling in a family business today. Don't allow that struggle to take control of your family life and destiny. Resist the urge to be right and embrace the urge to grow through what is causing that, and bring your family with you, because ultimately you should be in business so you can have a life, not have a life to be conformed to your business. And I just would ask anybody who's in struggle to email me, and I will be happy to reach out to you. But I really am passionate about this because I've seen so many families get torn apart. And for me, coming from a family business, it doesn't need to happen. So this is something I'm passionate about. It's something I deal with every single day. In fact, I'm dealing with it for some people right now. So this emotion that you see with me is because I sit with people watching families get fractured over things that could just be handled with structure, strategy, and intentionality. And I don't want to see that for anybody, because we're a family, right? And if you're a family and you're living together and you're working together and you're trying to win together, isn't that hard enough? Why do things? Why inject things into that environment and culture that detract from the beauty of being together? So thank you for listening to the B. Dawson Show, and I look forward to our next podcast.